Hi everyone, it's Kim. Thanks for joining me. Well, the spooky season is upon us, and it is official now that Tim Holtz has released his Halloween dies for this year. And he has released 6 original Thinlit dies from years past. And there's nothing different from the original dies except for the packaging. So we're going to take a look at those. And he also has released 2 3D embossing folders. The patterns are from the past, but the size is the new A7 size. So let's start with this spooky lady. And this is the original die. I have all the dies from when they originally came out. The only difference is the new die has black packaging, but everything else is the same. The size, everything. So this lady is called Witchcraft. She's been one of my favorite witches from the past. And when I put her together with all these other pieces, I had all the pieces and I just put them together. I only needed to make the background. When I finished with her, I was like, oh, not sure that I really liked her at the end with all these other different pieces. But I kept working on it, so I like her now. But I did make a different version of her, which I'll show you in just a minute. This tombstone, this was an embossed piece from Spellbinders, and it was a reject piece because when I had originally cut it out, my die cut was off from where it should have been. So it was in the reject pile, but I thought, oh, it might be perfect for this. So I just really grunged it up, put a little ink on that, made that as a background. And later I thought, oh, I'm going to make that my tombstone. That looks better. But it had this mushroom on it, and that's what really caught my attention. And I thought this mushroom could be a great table for my witch mixing something up. So I took the black embossed piece, and then I just embossed a piece of brown paper in this mushroom, fussy cut it out, and that is my witch's table. And I've seen so many mushrooms this year for Halloween decorations, so I'm like, maybe that's something new here. And I decided to use one of the brand new classic casserole, or as I like to call it, my Pyrex dish from Hero Arts and their classic casserole set. I just used the piece that cuts out a solid, like the solid bowl. I didn't use the piece that has a decoration that cuts out. And that's my bowl. The spoon comes from that same set. And then everything else, the cat, the witch, and the stars are all from this Witchcraft set. And then the RIP, the rest in peace, is from an old alpha set from Tim. This is called Alphanumeric Label. But it's the smallest alphabet set I had, and I thought it worked perfect for my tombstone. Now, I made pretty much the exact same thing because originally when I had done this, I just wasn't a big fan of it. So I thought I'm going to change it up a little bit. And instead of the tombstone, I put that great big moon behind her. I did basically the same thing. The mushroom's the same thing from this embossing set. I just embossed that mushroom. And this embossing set is called Mushrooms From Me to You. Emboss the mushroom, fussy cut that out, and that's still my table. All the exact same pieces, except I used the moon mask, and I die cut out this circle, and then just used the moon mask to color in, to stencil in the moon. And everything else is identical to the first card, just that different background, because I wasn't a big fan of this one until I worked on it a little bit. But love this witch. She is definitely a classic. Another one that he brought back that isn't as old as the witch are these leaves. And this one has the black packaging, so it's a much more recent die. This one is called Leaf Fragments. But these are nice big leaves, so it's sort of deceiving here. You can see actually how large the leaves are on this card. And I cut out a ton of these leaves, so we'll see some more of them again. But I thought I want to do something a little different. And Tim had said in his video that a lot of people use these throughout the years, and he has seen them used for wedding invitations. And I thought, well, maybe somebody's getting married in October. This would be a great wedding invitation. Again, very selective. People would get into that. But I thought just having the black and silver and white, that's still kind of the colors of Halloween. So I cut the 3 leaves out. They also talk about embossing them. I know when this originally came out, I did use a couple of embossing folders just to give some texture to these leaves. Now, I didn't emboss the white one because of all the glitter, but maybe you can see how the other two, the black and silver, those are embossed, and just that texture makes them that much more realistic. So I embossed this black one with the original foliage embossing folder, and this embossing folder is now in the new A7 size, so it's a lot larger. But you can see what the texture is. Now, this does not line up perfectly with the leaf, but you've got that center vein, and you can just kind of stick it in there. And because this is all cut apart, it doesn't really make a difference that it's not identical, but it just gives it some texture, and you can see some of the other veins that come out. So even though I don't have the larger size, this still worked for my leaves. A couple others that I have used in the past. So if you don't have the foliage, a couple others that worked, I have used this one. This is Reptile, and that's actually what I used on the silver leaf. It's the Reptile embossing folder. So this one works. And another one that I've used in the past is Leaf Veins. Now, this is a Sizzix embossing 3D folder. It's just not Tim's. But again, check through and see what you have. This has some veins on it, and it gives it a lot of texture. So this is another one that I've used to emboss the leaves. So just check your stash. What do you have? You just need to give it some texture. The other, while we're talking about embossing folders, the other new embossing folder that comes in the larger size is Cracked. And again, I don't have the larger size. This is the original one that I have, but you can see the design. So both of these, Foliage and Cracked, you can now get in the larger A7 version of 3D embossing folders. For the rest of this card, I pulled out my much loved skeleton hand from last year. That's from Spellbinders. That's in the Booze Cocktail. Now, I must have one of the very first dies that came out in this set because it did not have the skeleton hand on the packaging. And I had to look and look and look for that hand before it dawned on me mine was missing this. So it does have the hand in the packaging, just not on the outside. So if you're looking for the skeleton hand, it's Booze Cocktail, just in case the hand is not diagrammed on your packaging. But I love that hand. And then this little twine piece is new for this year that I have not used before. This is Field Notes Twine. This is from Spellbinders. There was a Field Notes collection that came out, and I haven't used this, but I thought that's perfect to hold those leaves together. I know there was another twine that came out, oh gosh, several years ago when the wax stamps came out. So you may have that in your collection. Now this die, and we'll flip it on the back here, has a kind of a short end and a longer end. So it would be off center, but I wanted it in the center of my card. So I just cut out this half, this long half twice, and then glued it together and then topped it off with the bow so I could have it, so I could have the bow in the center and have enough string on either side to go around my card. So again, always ways we can kind of cheat and make things work. And have a fabulous birthday. That is from a Spellbinders Better Press set. Again, I just did a bunch of those at one time, so now I just dig back through my stash and pull that out. But it is a Better Press plate from Spellbinders. So again, I have a ton of these cut out in different paper, but this is something a little different, just to have it more glittery and shiny. Another one that I have combined with some other dies from Tim and Spellbinders. So this Trick or Treaters, and the Trick or Treat sentiment is from Tim's classic die set. So this one is new too and came out again this year. This is called Trick or Treat. So we've got our trick or treaters here at the bottom, this nice trick or treat sentiment, and then a bat. And I combined this with Spellbinder's flower cart. When this flower cart came out at the beginning of the year, I knew I was going to be using this for many occasions, including Halloween and for Christmas, which we've seen. So my little trick-or-treaters are lined up waiting to get their treat from the Halloween card in this case. I went and dug through my stash for my skeletons, and I went to Memory Box because that's where I have my original skeletons, and I needed one that was fairly small. His feet are under here. You just can't see him, but he is perfect for this. This is a very old Happy Skeleton die from Memory Box. And then while I was digging him out, I found these little ghosts, swirling ghosts from Memory Box. So I decided I'd use those. Plenty of ghosts out there that would work to come out from your cart. The front of my cart is a leftover embossed piece. I think this is called Brickwork from Tim Holtz. Again, an old 3D embossing folder, but that was just a scrap I had in my stash. And I wanted to get some candy corn. And I thought, I know somewhere I have a really small candy corn die, but I couldn't remember whose it was, and I didn't want to spend 3 hours looking. So I made my own candy corn. This is a little raindrop. I kind of went back through my current dies. I thought, what can I find that's sort of in the shape of a piece of candy corn? So these little raindrops from the up in the air view from Spellbinders, I could just take this die, cut it out as many times as I needed, and then just color according to what candy corn looks like. And I put this little bowl is actually the top or the bottom of this hat. So I cut out the hat die, turned it upside down, cut this off right there, and that is my bowl for my candy corn. So too lazy to go find a little bowl. It was just as easy to do that. But those little trick-or-treaters, they're waiting for that candy corn as soon as the skeleton is done playing with it and then handing it out. So again, using something new with dies that we would not even think of as Halloween and repurposing them for a different use. All right, the next two dies from Tim's collection that are classics this year are the pumpkin and the haunted house. So the pumpkin is called Layered Jack-o'-lantern. He's great. He's a favorite. And this haunted house with the moon and the bats, that is called Haunted House. And so I've used the pieces from both of those sets here. This one has a little special feature of it. I couldn't resist lighting up my pumpkin with some of those pear blossom lights. This is the twinkling lights. And to make this work, I needed a place to press that light or that switch to activate the lights. So these tombstones, this is an old die as well. This is called from Village Graveyard. And I just used 3 of the tombstones just to cover up where I needed to press for the lights. And the lights I'm using for the pumpkin this time are the twinkle lights. So there's 3 separate lights in there, and I just lined them up behind. This time I have some vellum in the eyes and the mouth, and I did color it yellow. I just took my ink pad and blended some yellow on there. So it kind of makes the lights a little more subdued, and it looks like it's more of a candle in there flickering. And then I just placed my 3 lights accordingly so it would light up as much of that pumpkin as possible. If you're into the lights, just think what you could do with this haunted house. You could light that haunted house up as well. So that's 2 more of Tim's dies. And let's go back and look at those trick-or-treaters again. So here we have our trick-or-treaters again. This time I wanted to make an animated card. So I've got this little wheel here, and I'm going to make those bats fly. So just think if you were a bunch of trick-or-treaters and a bunch of bats started flying towards you. This is being animated by Karen Burniston's Whirly Wheel. So I really wanted to use this for some of the Halloween cards to animate certain parts of it. So on this one, I'm going to pull this out. I used an acetate arm, so I just cut the arm out in acetate. You can kind of see that there. And then I put on a couple wings. I cut this out several times, and then I just used the red liner tape, and you can kind of maybe see how I have that attached there on the back. And I put them on one by one. I started with this big bat and just made sure nothing collided, and then just added those all on, and then added the arms on and added a few more bats on to that original arm. The moon is from the stencil again, and I stenciled it onto the paper. I have let's see, let me find that here. And when I use the stencil, I die cut out a big circle to match the large stencil, and I don't know, what is that, maybe 4 or 5 inches. I measured the mask and then cut out this, so then I can set this down, and I inked in with white pigment ink that moon on top of my paper. I could have used that moon stamp, or excuse me, the moon die, which I did. This is where I got all my bats, but I didn't want something sticking up because I didn't want my arm and my bats to get hung up. Get that where you can see that. I didn't want a die cut piece here where I could potentially have my bats get hung up on my moon. So I decided to stencil it, but the bats all come from the Moonlight set from Tim. I was sort of surprised this wasn't a classic. This is one of my favorite dies, but it works great. And then this Boo is from the 6 die set that is out this year as his classic. This alphabet is called Alphanumeric Cutout Lower. We used this last week on a different card just for the letters, but that's his 6th set for his classic Halloween collection this year. But I love this. It was a simple card on the front, but it really made it a little fancier with my flying bats. Now, I wasn't done with this whirly wheel, and I want to show you one more, because on this one, I really stopped and played a little bit with this. So on this card, this was my grand finale Halloween card this time. First, I have a wheel, and you can see my frog is jumping in and out of that cauldron. But I did make some modifications, and I'll show you what I did, because I didn't want him jumping all over the place. So I needed him a little more controlled. And the other thing that he does is his little cauldron lights up, and maybe you can see it. It's so bright here. Let me see if I do this. I just think it's too bright. It's got to be a little darker. You can see right here on this bubble. Yeah, I just can't get it dark enough. It isn't super bright, but it does light up these bubbles, and you see the light underneath the bottom of his body, but just not today because it's so light, but you can see those bubbles sort of light up. So he can, in a darker room, you can see his bubbles light up, and you can see the frog jumping in and out of that cauldron, trying to escape being the witch's dinner. So I wanted this frog to be a little more contained, and I'm going to show you what I did, and I'm going to pull this bat one back in. So on this is the wheel as it normally works, and you can see, if I get it down here right, you can see how far out those bats fly off the card. But I didn't want my frog flying way over here or way up here. I wanted him more contained. So it looked like he was just jumping up and down out of the pot. So I needed to make some modifications on this wheel. And I want to show you what I did, because I did spend quite a bit of time playing with this. And Karen has a great video out on how to make this wheel work. And ironically, the day after I did my little arms on this, she has a new video out, which I will put the link to. It's for her August virtual class. And she shows how to have 3 separate arms that move all independently of each other. So if you're into this whirly wheel, check that video out. The link's in the description box because it's amazing, I think, of all the things that we can do with this. But to keep my frog a little more contained, this is what I did. So this is the whirly wheel mechanical part of it. And this big hole is the hole that is die cut, but I thought I need to contain my little frog a little more. So I punched some different holes around here and tried these out. And I finally thought after playing with this, and I used a brad in the middle of the arm here. So I wasn't trying to get these little, if you know how this works, I wasn't trying to get these little things. There's no way I could get these little flaps through here like I could here, and I don't want to punch these big holes, and especially when I'm so close to the center of this big wheel, I didn't want my arm, I would just ruin that. So I just made these little holes. You can see them all over here and tried them all out, and I used a brad. And in the video that I'm linking, Karen talks about using a brad and some tips on that. Anyway, this way, if I had a little arm here. That's the other thing I did. I made my arms a little different, my sleeves a little different width. So 1 inch is the original 5/8 and a half inch. And then this helped contain it more. So I just made my little sleeves, and I put a little, I don't know what to call this, a little thing on the back here so I could hang on to it. So when I need to play with it, I can hold it in position, turn my wheel, and see how that works. Let me see here. What works, and it's because this contains it a lot more than the 1 inch one. And now this one doesn't want to fold there, but you get the idea of how I can play with that. So it was still, I needed, I know this is a long explanation. Instead of doing it on the side, I did it on the bottom because I wanted my frog to be jumping up and down. And I decided I needed a smaller wheel because this was just too high for my card here. So I die cut a small circle. This is 2 inches. I centered it into the wheel die so I could get these little flaps die cut. And I basically did the same thing. I had already played with it over here. So my hole on my arm is 3/8 of an inch away from like the center of the wheel hole. Did everything basically the same. I used a 1/2 inch sleeve. I just die cut that out and then folded it a little different so I could get a 1/2 inch. And now this is basically how my frog works. And I just did it step by step. My hole that I made for my frog, you can't see it because it's underneath the cauldron, but it's actually this big old piece. So as my frog goes in, his legs don't get caught on the slot on the inside. And when I added the light to the back of the cauldron, that kind of squished things up and pushed things down. So that's why I had to open up the opening for the frog to go up and down. So again, this was just a lot of playing and testing, test, before I added all the final pieces. And once I got it working good, then I added the witch and all my little bobble things here for my boiling cauldron. Long explanation, so sorry if you're not into the whirly wheel. You may no longer be with us, but in case you are and you want to try some different things with the whirly wheel, just do this and play with it until you get it to work. My frog is from Kieran Burniston. I tried to grunge him up and make him look a little more fearful than maybe he would be if he was just a cute little frog. The cauldron is an ancient, well, not too, well, I guess it is an ancient. It's a Biggs die. It's in the black packaging, so it's not too old. From Tim, this is, what is this one called? I think it's called just Cauldron. And it was the big enough size for my witch to be stirring. My little embellishments here, if you have any like little clear dots, those would work. I found these fairy drops in my stash. I didn't even know I had them. And I just used, I used a Copic, but any alcohol-based marker, Sharpie would work. These were already colored, but these were in different sizes, so you can see where I colored them up and just added them to my cauldron. And the light, which we really can't see, is a single light. Mine I pulled from the Halo light combo. It's just this one light because it's a little longer in length. But if you have the one lights from Pear Blossom Press, this would work as well. And you don't have to have a light, but since I had one, I thought I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. So that is using Tim's classic dies that he has brought back from the past for this year's Halloween. And again, 2 new embossing folders plus all of these dies. So if you have the dies already, as Tim said, you're saving money that you can spend elsewhere this year. But if you don't have these dies and you are interested in them, definitely get them sooner than later, because this will probably be the last time that we see these out to be able to purchase. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you again in a future video.